Loading Bay 7 smelled the way it always did. Grease, recycled air, and the faint chemical bite of coolant leaking from somewhere nobody bothered to fix. Rohan Middle dragged a cargo pallet across the floor, his boots squeaking against metal, his arms burning from 12 hours of the same motion. Drag, stack, scan, drag, stack, scan. He was 19 years old. He had been doing this for 8 months. Before that, he had been on a farming colony where his mother grew vegetables in soil she had spent years making fertile. He had left because the colony needed money and he was the only one old enough to earn it. So here he was on Waypoint 9, a freight station floating at the crossroads of 4 shipping lanes, hauling boxes for species that barely noticed he existed. Nobody noticed this. That was the first rule of the job. You were furniture. You were the thing that moved things. Rowan had made peace with that a long time ago. He was reaching for the next pallet when he heard the sound. It came from the ventilation access hatch on the far wall. A scraping noise, then a thud, then silence. Rohan stood still. Rats were not uncommon on the station, though they were not technically rats. They were small, 6-legged creatures from a world nobody remembered the name of, and they lived in the walls like they owned the place. But this sound was too heavy for rats. The hatch cover shifted. Then it fell open, clanging against the floor, and something tumbled out. Not something. Someone. She was small. Painfully small. Her skin was pale violet, and it was glowing, but the glow was wrong. It flickered like a light with a bad connection, jumping between soft purple and sharp bursts of orange. She wore a thin gray garment that was torn at the shoulder, and through the tear Rohan could see blood. Not red blood. Something pale and silvery that caught the light as it ran down her arm. She hit the floor and tried to stand. Her legs folded under her like they were made of paper. She crawled forward, dragging herself behind a stack of crates, leaving a thin trail of silver on the metal floor. Rohan stood there with a pallet scanner in his hand and his heart hammering in his chest. His first thought was to call station security. That was protocol. Injured person, unknown species, unauthorized entry through ventilation. You called it in and you went back to work. Simple. He pulled out his comm unit. Then she looked at him. Her eyes were large and dark, almost entirely pupil, and they held a terror so raw that it went past language and species and everything else. She reached out one hand toward him. Her fingers were long and impossibly thin. They trembled. "Please," she whispered. One word. Broken common. Barely a sound at all. Rohan put the comm unit back in his pocket. He did not think about it. Later, he would try to explain the decision to himself and fail every time. But in that moment, his hand just moved. The comm went away, and he went to her. He knelt beside the crates. Up close, she was even more fragile than she had looked from across the bay. Her bones seemed to press outward against her skin like they were trying to escape. Her breathing was shallow and quick. The orange flickers in her glow were coming faster now. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay, I'm not going to hurt you." She stared at him. He did not know if she understood. He tore a strip from his sleeve and pressed it against the wound on her shoulder. She flinched, and he felt the flinch travel through her entire body like a wave through water. She weighed nothing. She was made of nothing. "I know a place," he said. "Behind the wall. There is a panel. Nobody goes there." He helped her up. She leaned on him, and it was like holding mist. He walked her to the false panel he had discovered 3 months ago while looking for a drop scanner. Behind it was a space just large enough for a person to sit. Maintenance access, probably long forgotten. He settled her inside. He brought water from his canteen. She drank like she had not had water in days. 15 minutes later, the station-wide announcement played. "Attention all personnel. The Caliph Commerce Delegation requests full cooperation in locating a stolen asset. The subject is a Villani female, adolescent, bioluminescent skin, approximately 140 centimeters in height. A reward of 12,000 galactic credits is offered for verified information leading to recovery." 12,000 credits. That was more than Rohan would earn in 5 years of dragging pallets. He looked at the false panel. Behind it, a girl was hiding in the dark, bleeding silver, glowing orange with fear. He went back to work. He finished his shift. He clocked out. He walked past the security office without stopping. Then he went back to loading bay 7 with a ration pack and a blanket stolen from the break room. He slid open the panel. She was still there, curled into herself, her glow so dim now that he could barely see her. When she saw him, the light shifted, just slightly. A flicker of something that was not orange and not violet, but somewhere in between. "My name is Rohan," he said. She looked at him for a long time. "Lyra," she said. He sat down across from her in the narrow dark space and opened the ration pack. He did not know what she was. He did not know what she carried. He did not know that he had just made the most dangerous decision of his entire short life. He only knew that she had said please, and he had listened. That was enough. 2 days passed, and Rohan became a thief. Not a good one. He stole ration packs from the break room by shoving them into his jacket when the security camera cycled to the opposite wall. He took a medical kit from the emergency locker on level 3 by pretending to report an injury and then walking away with it. He filled water bottles in the communal washroom and carried them under his shirt, pressed cold against his stomach as he walked through the corridors trying to look normal. He was terrible at all of it. His hands shook. His face turned red. He walked too fast and looked over his shoulder too often. Nobody noticed. That was the thing about being a cargo loader on Waypoint 9. You could walk through the entire station carrying a stolen medical kit under your arm, and nobody would look at you twice. You were invisible. You were part of the machinery. For the first time in his life, Rohan was grateful for that. Lyra was healing, but slowly. Her shoulder wound had closed into a thin silver line, but her body seemed to resist recovery, like it could not afford the energy. She slept for long stretches, curled in the narrow space behind the panel. Her glow dimmed to almost nothing. When she was awake, she watched Rohan with those enormous dark eyes and said very little. On the second evening, she started to talk. Her common was broken and patchy, full of gaps where she substituted light pulses for words she did not know. Rohan learned to read them without thinking about it. A soft blue ripple across her skin meant she was calm. A quick orange flash meant something frightened her. A slow shift to deep purple meant she was thinking, choosing her words carefully. He told her about his mother's garden, about the red soil of his colony world, and the way the sunlight, there was always slightly golden in the late afternoon. He told her about hauling crates and eating alone and calling home once a week on a comm channel that cost too much and was worth every credit. When he talked about the garden, Lyra's skin settled into a blue he had never seen from her before, steady and warm, like a candle behind glass. On the third day, she told him what she carried. She pulled back the sleeve on her left arm and showed him her wrist. Beneath the skin, he could see something. A thin shape, rectangular, no bigger than a fingernail. It sat just under the surface, embedded in the tissue, glowing faintly with its own light. "This," Lyra said, and then paused, searching for words. Her skin shifted to deep purple. "This is my people." Rohan did not understand. She tried again. The Villani were a species of light. They communicated through bioluminescence. They sang in colors. Their entire cultural identity was encoded not in books or databases, but in the living patterns of their biology. And 2 cycles ago, the Caliph had taken their world. Not through war. The Caliph were smarter than that. They called it integration. They called it progress. They began altering Villani genetics, generation by generation, stripping away the bioluminescence, the light language, the biological markers that made the Villani what they were. In 3 generations, the Caliph said, the Villani would be fully integrated. They would be healthy, productive members of the Caliph Commerce Union. They would also no longer be Villani. The data shard in Lyra's wrist contained the complete Villani genome archive. Every biological marker, every genetic sequence, every piece of information needed to preserve what the Villani were before the Caliph began their erasure. It was the only complete copy in existence. Lyra had been chosen to carry it because she was small, quiet, and already dying. Her bones were failing, a degenerative condition that made her skeleton grow more brittle with each passing month. She had been expected to deliver the archive to a contact on Waypoint 9 and then disappear. Nobody had expected her to survive much longer than that. "Contact is gone," Lyra said. Her skin flickered orange. "I came. The place was empty. No one there. No message. The contact was dead, or captured, or simply gone." Lyra had arrived at Waypoint 9, carrying the last record of her entire species with nowhere to take it and no one to give it to. Rohan sat in the dark behind the panel and stared at the faint glow in her wrist. He did not understand genome archives. He did not understand galactic politics or genetic erasure or any of the words she had used. He was a cargo loader from a farming colony. He had barely finished basic education. But he understood a girl sitting in the dark holding the memory of everyone she had ever loved, watching it flicker, knowing it could go out. "I will help you," he said. Lyra looked at him. Her skin pulsed something between blue and orange, hope fighting with fear. "Why?" she asked. Rohan thought about it. He tried to find something big enough to match the moment. A reason that sounded noble or brave, or at least intelligent. Nothing came. "Because you asked," he said. Lyra stared at him. Then her skin did something it had not done since he had found her. It went still, completely still, and then it shifted to a soft, steady blue, so bright it lit up the tiny space like a small sun. Outside the panel, outside the loading bay, outside the world they had built in the dark, a Caliph warship docked at Waypoint 9. Commander Dysoren stepped onto the station with 2 aides and a bioscanner calibrated to detect Volani bioluminescence at a range of 500 meters. He was calm. He was patient. He had never failed a recovery operation. Rohan did not know he was coming, but the clock had started. Nomi's noodle stall sat in the corner of the commercial district like it had grown there. The counter was scratched. The stools were uneven. The menu had not changed in 14 years, and the prices only went up. Nomi herself was a Brishi, which meant she was short, wide, covered in coarse brown fur, and had a face that looked permanently annoyed even when she was happy. She was rarely happy. She had been on Waypoint 9 for 30 years. She had survived 2 station riots, a coolant breach that killed 40 people, and a tax audit from the Trade Authority that she still described as the worst day of her life. She made noodles. She listened. She remembered everything. Rohan sat on one of the uneven stools and ordered a bowl he could not afford. "You look terrible," Nomi said, dropping the bowl in front of him. "I need help," Rohan said. "You need sleep." "I need help, Nomi." She looked at him. Nomi had known Rohan since his first week on the station, when he had wandered into her stall looking lost and hungry, and she had given him half a portion for free because he reminded her of someone. She never said who. "Talk," she said. Rohan talked. He told her about the girl, about the ventilation hatch, the silver blood, the data shard beneath her skin, about the Caliph announcement and the 12,000 credit reward, and the fact that he had hidden a fugitive in loading Bay 7 for 3 days and was running out of stolen ration packs. Nomi listened without expression. When he finished, she wiped the counter with a rag that had not been clean in years. "You are an idiot," she said. "I know. A complete and total idiot. Yes. The Caliph will kill you. Not quickly. They will find out what you know first, and then they will kill you, and nobody on this station will remember your name in a week. I know that too." Nomi stopped wiping. She put both hands flat on the counter and stared at him with her small dark eyes. "What do you need?" Rohan told her. A way off the station for Lyra. A ship that would not ask questions. A route to neutral space where the archive could be transmitted to the Volani diaspora network. Nomi was quiet for a long time. Around them, the commercial district hummed with the noise of 1,000 species eating, arguing, and trying to sell things to each other. Nobody paid attention to an old Brishi woman and a young human boy having a conversation over noodles. "There's a ship," Nomi said finally. "Bresi Karbovesed." The quiet wind. "Captain owes me a favor from a long time ago. She is leaving in 36 hours for neutral space. If your girl can reach Docking Bay 14, she could be on that ship. Docking Bay 14 is on the other side of the station." "Yes." "And the Caliph are searching everywhere." "Yes." "How do we get there?" Nomi pulled a creased piece of paper from under the counter and began to draw. Maintenance tunnels. Service corridors. A decommissioned water recycling plant that nobody had entered in 5 years. a path that avoided every security checkpoint and every public corridor. 2 kilometers, give or take. Rohan studied the map. 2 kilometers. Through tunnels and crawl spaces and abandoned machinery. In the dark. Lyra cannot walk that far, he said quietly. Her bones. She can barely stand. Nomi looked at him. Then you carry her. That evening, Rohan went to the equipment storage room and found a cargo harness. It was designed for transporting fragile goods, the kind of things that broke if you looked at them wrong. Crystalline components, lab samples, things worth more than people. He modified it in his bunk room with tools borrowed from the maintenance closet. He added padding from his own pillow. He adjusted the straps so the weight would sit across his shoulders and hips instead of pulling at a single point. He tested it by loading it with his blankets and walking the corridors at night, adjusting, tightening, rethinking. When he returned to Lyra the next morning, she was worse. Her glow had dimmed further. She sat with her back against the wall, her legs pulled close, and he could see the pain in the way she held herself. Every movement cost her something. We are leaving, he told her. I found a ship, but I need to carry you. She looked at the harness in his hands. She looked at him. If I die, she said carefully, the shard. You must cut it out. Take it yourself. You are not going to die. Rohan, listen. If I die, the archive must survive. My people must survive. Promise me. He did not promise. He could not. Not that. He could promise to carry her, to walk 2 kilometers in the dark, to face whatever came. But he could not promise to cut a piece of her out and walk away from her body. I will carry you, he said. That is what I am promising. Lyra stared at him. Then, slowly, her skin shifted. Not blue, not orange, not violet. Something else entirely. A deep, warm gold that filled the tiny space like sunlight pouring through a window. What does that mean? Rohan asked softly. Lyra took a long time to answer. It means someone worth remembering, she said. Rohan did not know what to say to that. So he sat with her in the golden light, and he said nothing, and the silence between them felt like the safest place on the entire station. Outside, Commander Soren reviewed security footage from loading Bay 7. He watched a young human male enter and exit the bay at irregular hours. He watched the pattern. He filed it away. He was patient. He had time, but Rohan and Lyra did not. Nomi passed information through noodle orders. A note folded inside a napkin with the broth. A time scribbled on the underside of a receipt. Old methods. No signals to intercept. No data trails to follow. Rohan ate more noodles in 24 hours than he had in the previous month. His co-workers assumed he had finally lost his mind from the monotony of hauling crates. He let them think that. The plan was simple. In 36 hours, the Quiet Wind would be fueled and ready at Docking Bay 14. Rohan would carry Lyra through the maintenance tunnels at shift change, when the corridors were busiest and security was thinnest. 2 kilometers. 90 minutes if he moved carefully. Then Lyra would board the ship, reach neutral space, and transmit the archive to her people. Simple. Clean. 36 hours. They did not get 36 hours. Commander Dai, Soren, moved faster than Rohan expected. Faster than anyone expected. The Caliph officer had been on the station for less than 2 days, and already he had mapped the security blind spots, bribed 3 maintenance workers, and cross-referenced the station's entry logs against the ventilation system schematics. He did not waste time with station security. He did not file requests through the Trade Authority. He simply watched, calculated, and acted. On the morning of the second day, Soren appeared in loading Bay 7. Rohan was halfway through his shift when the bay doors opened and 3 Caliph officers walked in. They wore gray uniforms with no insignia, which somehow made them more frightening than any badge could have. Behind them walked Soren. He was tall, even for a Caliph. Gray skin stretched over sharp features. Eyes that moved slowly and missed nothing. He carried no weapon that Rohan could see, and that was somehow worse. Routine inspection, Soren announced to the bay. His voice was soft and precise. We will need all personnel to remain at their stations. This should not take long. Rohan's hands went cold. He gripped the pallet scanner and forced himself to keep working. Drag, stack, scan. Do not look at the false panel. Do not look at anything. The officers spread through the bay. They opened crates. They checked manifests. They moved slowly, methodically, and Rohan understood that the inspection was not about cargo. It was about watching people, watching how they reacted, watching who was nervous. Rohan was very, very nervous. Soren walked the perimeter of the bay. He paused near the ventilation hatch where Lyra had entered. He crouched and ran one finger along the edge of the hatch cover. Then he stood and continued walking. He passed within 3 meters of the false panel. Rohan stopped breathing. Behind that panel, Lyra was sitting in the dark. If she was awake, she would hear the footsteps. If she was afraid, her skin would glow orange. If the glow was bright enough, and if Soren had the right scanner, he would see it through the wall. Soren paused. He turned his head slightly, as if listening to something. Then he walked on. The inspection lasted 40 minutes. When it was over, Soren and his officers left without a word. Rohan stood in the bay with his hands shaking and sweat running down his back and the absolute certainty that they would come back. Not tomorrow. Not in 36 hours. Soon. He pulled out his comm and sent a single word to Nomi through the station's internal messaging system, buried in a noodle order. Tonight. Nomi's reply came 12 minutes later, also buried in an order confirmation. Bay 14. Third shift bell. Quiet wind ready. That left 6 hours. Rohan worked the rest of his shift in a state of controlled terror. He smiled at co-workers. He hauled crates. He ate lunch in the break room and laughed at a joke someone told about a Taurani merchant and a broken translator. He was performing normalcy like his life depended on it because it did. During his break, he walked the first section of the tunnel route from memory. He counted steps. He noted where the floor was uneven, where the ceiling dropped low, where the old pipes created obstacles he would need to navigate while carrying someone on his back. He returned to Lyra as soon as his shift ended. She was awake. Her glow was dim, and her breathing was careful and shallow, the way someone breathes when every expansion of their ribs hurts. They came, she said. It was not a question. She had heard the footsteps. They will come back, Rohan said. We leave tonight. He showed her the harness. He explained the route. 2 kilometers through maintenance tunnels and an abandoned water plant to docking Bay 14. He would carry her the entire way. Lyra looked at the harness. She looked at him. She was quiet for a long time. You are afraid, she said. Yes. But you are still going. Yes. Her skin flickered through several colors in quick succession. Purple, blue, a flash of orange, and then settling into something Rohan had not seen before. A color between violet and gold, shifting slowly, like a sunset that could not decide whether to end or begin. In my language, Lyra said softly, there's a light for someone who walks toward danger for no reason except that someone else cannot walk at all. We thought it was a light that only existed in old stories. We did not think real people carried it. What color is it? Rohan asked. Lyra looked at him, and her skin answered before her words did. It shifted to a white so pure and steady that it turned the dark space into something that felt, for just one moment, like a place where nothing bad could reach them. That color, she whispered. Rohan picked up the harness. 6 hours, he said. Try to sleep. She closed her eyes. The white light dimmed to a gentle glow. Rohan sat beside her and did not sleep at all. He counted the minutes. He memorized the map. He listened to the station humming around them, vast and indifferent. 6 hours. 2 kilometers. He could do this. He had to. The third shift bell rang through waypoint, 9 like a heartbeat, and Rohan opened the panel. Lyra was awake. She had not slept either. Her glow was so faint that he could barely see her outline in the dark. She looked up at him and said nothing. There was nothing left to say. He knelt beside her and held out the harness. Getting her into it was the hardest part. Every movement made her wince. Her bones shifted beneath her skin in ways that bones should not shift. He worked slowly, sliding the padded straps around her torso, adjusting them so the weight sat across his shoulders and the broad band across his hips. He tightened everything until she was secure against his back, her arms resting on his shoulders, her face pressed against the side of his neck. She weighed almost nothing. He could feel every rib, Ready, he asked, a pulse of light against his skin. Faint blue. Yes. He stood. He walked out of loading bay 7 for the last time and turned into the maintenance corridor that led to the tunnel entrance. The tunnels were dark. Not the comfortable dark of a room with the lights off, but the deep, heavy dark of a place that had been forgotten. The air was stale. The walls were close. Pipes ran along the ceiling, some of them still warm, some of them cold, and dripping condensation that hit his shoulders as he walked. Rohan moved carefully. Every step was measured. The floor was uneven, and one wrong step with Lyra on his back could mean a fall that would shatter her. He counted paces. 100, 200, 300. The tunnel narrowed, and he turned sideways, pressing his back against one wall to protect Lyra, shuffling through a gap that scraped his chest. She made no sound. Her light pulsed against his neck in a rhythm that matched his breathing. At the 400 pace mark, the tunnel opened into a junction. He checked the map in his memory. Left, then straight, then up a maintenance ladder to level 4. The ladder worried him most. He would need both hands, and Lyra would be dead weight on his back, her fragile body pressed against his spine as he climbed. He reached the ladder. 12 rungs. He gripped the first one and started climbing. Lyra's arms tightened around his shoulders. Not much, just enough to tell him she was holding on. He climbed, one rung at a time. His arms burned. His back screamed. 12 rungs had never felt so far. He made it. He pulled himself onto the upper level and leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Lyra's light flickered against his skin. Still blue, still trusting. He kept walking. At the 700 pace mark, they entered the decommissioned water recycling plant. It was a vast open space, dark except for the dim emergency lights that ran on an independent power source nobody had bothered to disconnect. Old tanks stood like sleeping animals in rows. The floor was damp. The air smelled like chemicals and rust. Rohan was halfway across the plant when he heard the footstep behind him. He stopped. The sound stopped. He waited. Silence. Then a voice, calm and quiet, echoing off the old tanks. Put her down. Soren stepped out from behind a filtration unit 20 meters away. He was alone. No officers. No weapons visible. Just a tall gray figure standing in the half-dark with his hands clasped behind his back. I tracked her bioluminescence, Soren said. Even this faint, the scanner reads it. You have been walking for 30 minutes. I have been behind you for 20. Rohan stood perfectly still. Lyra's light against his neck shifted to orange. Fust, panic pulses. The Villani are dying, Soren continued, walking closer. Not because of us, because of biology. Their genome is unstable. It has been for centuries. What we offer is survival, integration. Their descendants will live. They will simply live as something new. Something that does not glow, Rohan said. Something that does not break. Soren was 10 meters away now, close enough for Rohan to see the patience in his eyes. This was not a man who enjoyed cruelty. This was a man who believed he was right, and that was far more dangerous. She will be dead within a year, Soren said. Her bones are failing. The archive is a symbol, nothing more. You are destroying your life for a symbol. She glows gold when she feels safe, Rohan said. That is not a symbol. Soren stopped walking. He studied Rohan the way someone studies a machine that is not working the way it should. I do not understand you, he said. I know, Rohan said. Then he reached for the valve on the wall beside him. He had seen it when he entered the plant. Old infrastructure, water recycling. The valve still connected to the emergency flush system, designed to clean the tanks in case of contamination. He pulled the valve. Water exploded from vents in the floor and ceiling. Treated water, heavy with minerals and dissolved metals, flooded the plant in a roar of white noise and chaos. Soren's bioscanner shorted out. His comm unit sparked and died. The emergency lights flickered and went dark. Rohan ran. He ran through knee-deep water with Lyra on his back. He ran blind, following the wall with one hand, counting paces with the part of his brain that was not screaming. Behind him, he heard Soren shout something that the water swallowed. He reached the far exit. He slammed through the door and into the service corridor beyond. 1 kilometer down. 1 to go. He ran. His boots were full of water. His lungs burned. Lyra clung to his back, and her light pulsed against his neck. Not blue, not orange, not gold, but white again. That impossible, steady white. He talked to her as he ran. About his mother's garden. About the golden light on his homeworld. About anything, everything, just to keep her present, just to keep her glow alive. 1 kilometer. He did not stop. Docking Bay 14 smelled like engine fuel and hot metal. It was the most beautiful place Rohan had ever seen. The quiet wind sat on the landing pad with her engines glowing a dull orange. She was an ugly ship, boxy, scarred, patched in places with metal that did not match the hull. She looked like she had been repaired 100 times by people who cared more about function than appearance. She was perfect. The cargo ramp was down. A Brishi woman stood at the top of it with her arms crossed, watching Rohan stagger across the bay floor with a dying girl strapped to his back and water dripping from every part of him. She did not ask questions. She did not ask for identification or clearance codes or any of the things that people in authority asked when they wanted to feel important. She looked at Lyra. She looked at Rohan. "Get on the ship," she said. Rohan climbed the ramp. His legs gave out on the third step, and he caught himself on the railing with one hand. Someone took his arm. Someone else helped ease Lyra off his back. He heard voices speaking Brishi, rapid and low, and then he was sitting on the floor of the cargo hold with his back against the wall, breathing like he had forgotten how. Lyra was on a cot. A crew member was scanning her with a medical device that beeped softly. Her glow was so faint now that she looked almost gray, almost like the color had been drained from her entirely. But she was conscious. Her eyes were open. She was looking at Rohan. "The archive," she whispered. The captain's communications officer was already at a console. They connected Lyra's wrist to a transmission array through a thin cable that slid into a port Rohan had not noticed on the underside of the data shard. Lyra pressed her fingers to the shard and pulsed a code through her skin, a sequence of light that served as authentication. The upload began. It took 4 minutes. 4 minutes for the complete biological record of the Villani species to travel from a shard beneath a dying girl's skin, through a battered Brishi communications array, across encrypted relay channels, to dozens of hidden receiving stations scattered through neutral space. 4 minutes to save a civilization. Rohan watched the progress indicator on the console screen. He did not understand the numbers or the symbols. He only understood when the communications officer turned and nodded. "Receive," the officer said. "All stations confirm. The archive is secure." Lyra closed her eyes. Her skin shifted, slowly, like a sunrise that had been waiting behind clouds. Her glow returned. Not the dim flicker she had carried for days. Not the frightened orange or the careful purple. Gold. Deep, warm, steady gold that filled the cargo hold and made the metal walls look like they were made of something precious. She opened her eyes and looked at Rohan. "You carried more than me," she said. Her comment was clear, almost perfect. She had been practicing, he realized, practicing those 4 words for this moment. The quiet wind's engines powered up. The captain appeared in the cargo hold doorway. "We leave in 2 minutes," she said to Rohan. "You can stay or go. Your choice." Rohan looked at Lyra. She was at a Villani refuge colony, a place where her people could use the archive, a place where he would know no one and understand nothing and have no work and no way home. "Go back," Lyra said softly. Her gold light pulsed. "You have a mother who waits for you. Go back." He wanted to argue. He wanted to stay. But he looked at her and he knew she was right. His story was not out there in neutral space. His story was here, on a freight station that smelled like grease, hauling crates, calling home once a week. He took her hand. It was still as light as paper, but the bones beneath held firm, at least for now. "Do not let them erase you," he said. "They cannot," she said. "Not anymore." He walked down the cargo ramp and stood in docking Bay 14 and watched the quiet wind lift off. The engines flared. The ship rose, turned, and slid through the atmospheric barrier into open space. In 3 seconds, it was gone. Rohan stood there for a long time. Then he went to find Nomi. She was in the commercial district, standing in front of what had been her noodle stall. It was half-burned. She had set the fire herself as a diversion. pulling security away from the lower levels while Rohan ran. 30 years of her life, reduced to scorched metal and ash. She was already cleaning up. "Sit down," she said when she saw him. She produced a bowl of noodles from somewhere impossible. "Eat. Your stall," he said. "Insurance," she said. "And favors. I will rebuild. Sit down." He sat. He ate. The noodles tasted the same as always. "Is she safe?" Nomi asked. "She is safe." Nomi nodded once and went back to cleaning. Rohan returned to work the next day. He hauled crates. He ate in the break room. He called his mother and told her nothing except that he loved her and her garden and the golden afternoon light on their colony world. He never learned what happened after. He never learned that the story spread, that a rumor moved through the shipping lanes and the trading posts and the refugee camps. A human cargo loader, a dying alien girl, 2 kilometers in the dark. No weapons, no training, no reason except that she was afraid and he was there. The Caliph dismissed it. The Brishi shared it over meals. The Torani sang it in harmonics. And on a Valani refuge colony, the first child born from the restored archive opened her eyes to a world that remembered what it was, because a boy from a small planet had carried it home. In the cultural record, the entry was simple. When we were almost gone, he did not look away. That is the human secret. That is what is written across the cosmos. They do not look away.